A car crash near the U.S. border leaves 13 people dead. Where it happened is a dangerous stretch for accidents.
More vaccines are heading to California. Food and agriculture workers are now eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccine.
One teenager is in hot water for reselling exclusive Nikes at sky-high prices. See why some people spend big bucks on limited edition sneakers. Annenberg TV News is next.
Live from USC, you're watching Annenberg TV News.
A highway near the U.S. border became the site of a deadly crash. A semi-truck and SUV collided in Imperial County, killing 13 people. Good evening, I'm Noah Camras reporting from Los Angeles.
And I'm Cambri Guest, also reporting from LA. Several people were injured in the crash, but tonight there's no word on what caused it. The crash happened just after sunrise in Imperial County. That's about 200 miles south of USC. The SUV and semi collided on a rural highway, 10 miles north of the US-Mexico border. The Ford Expedition, which safely carries 8, had 25 people packed inside. The driver of the semi-truck suffered minor injuries, and more than a dozen surviving passengers were transported to local hospitals. Reporter and Annenberg alum Jacquelyn is outside El Centro Medical Center in Palm Springs with the latest on the passengers there.
4 of the survivors in this horrendous collision were brought here to the hospital behind me, Desert Regional Medical Center in Palm Springs. One of them is the driver of that big rig, according to CHP, who's investigating this crash. They were flown here to the trauma center by helicopter directly from the scene. They were not transferred from another hospital. 2 are in the ICU right now, 1 in critical condition. The other 2 tonight are in normal patient rooms, their conditions stable at this hour. People in that SUV range in age from 15 years old to 53. Many of the survivors were brought to hospitals nearby to where that crash happened, as well as a hospital in San Diego, one of them dying on the way to El Centro Regional Medical Center. This helicopter seen landing near the scene of the crash, hospitals are treating it as a mass casualty incident. And a lot is left to be investigated in this crash, of course, how it happened, who is at fault, and many of these patients are still not out of the woods just yet. And there is some good news to report tonight out of that El Centro hospital. One of their patients there has now been released at this hour. And we are, of course, hoping for the best for all involved in this crash. In Palm Springs, I'm Jacquelyn Gracia.
The cause of the crash and the citizenship status of the passengers is unknown. But one expert at USC's immigration clinic says some of the wrecks along the California-Mexico border involve farm workers.
Well, I mean, I think you see this in cases with coyotes who are bringing people across the border and packing a bunch of people in a car. You also see this with certain farm workers. I know it was common in the Central Valley in the past where transporting farm workers to locations would be done in very unsafe ways, piling a bunch of people in. But this is definitely not, you said, is this normal? I mean, this is something was going on here that you had so many people in a car that was only equipped for carrying what was like 7 passengers or 8 passengers.
A study by the UCLA Williams Institute shows the devastating impact of COVID-19 on LGBTQ+ communities. The data shows people of color in the LGBTQ+ community are hit especially hard.
It's that much more worse. Like seeing how it affects the 2S LGBTQ+ community, but also as a Black kid who also grew up in a low-income area, it very much exposes a lot of the health disparities that have always and so concretely existed in the realm of healthcare and just like America in general.
In the LGBTQ+ community, people of color are twice as likely to test positive for COVID-19 compared to their non-LGBTQ+ white counterparts. The pandemic has also impacted the LGBTQ+ community in the areas of jobs and finances. 15% of LGBT people of color reported being laid off, compared to 11.5% of non-LGBT people of color. In contrast, just 5% of non-LGBT white people reported the same.
This fits with the general pattern that we see in terms of race, ethnicity in the population, in terms of the impact of COVID, who's getting sick with COVID. And while we have some gaps related to LGBT people, an operating hypothesis is that it's the kinds of jobs that people work at that don't allow them to isolate, to work from home. It may also be related to whether people are living with roommates and other folks to help afford the cost of housing.
Today, the Equality California Institute launched a statewide bilingual campaign for the LGBTQ plus community. The organization is partnering with the California Department of Social Services to promote COVID-19 testing, vaccinations, and safety guidance.
400,000 doses of the new FDA-approved Johnson & Johnson vaccine are headed to California this week. This could help the 1.2 million people who just became eligible for a vaccination, including education and food workers. Those working in food service, including servers, food preparation, carryout, and delivery, can all get vaccinated. One restaurant owner says she's happy her staff can feel safer at work.
We got lucky and got a spot on the first day. We encourage everyone to get vaccinated, but it's a personal choice. So we're not going to force anyone to do anything that they don't want to do. But most of our staff really want to get vaccinated. If dine-in can come back, that would help the restaurant industry hugely. I feel like this is an important step towards getting the economy back and businesses reopened.
According to LA County Public Health, food and agriculture workers can get vaccinated at county-run mega sites on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Vernon Jordan, civil rights activist and close advisor to Bill Clinton, died at the age of 85 Monday night. I'm Emily Bonilla, reporting from Altadena. Jordan was born in Atlanta and was part of the legal team that helped the first Black students win admission into the University of Georgia in 1961. Now, almost 60 years later, racial discrimination in the form of voter suppression is the issue. Georgia's record voter turnout in the 2020 presidential and U.S. Senate elections have prompted a wave of GOP legislation to restrict voting access. Yesterday, the Georgia House passed a bill that could create even more barriers to voters. If approved by the state Senate, it would restrict ballot drop boxes, require more ID for absentee voting, and limit weekend early voting days. We spoke to a Georgia resident about how voter suppression continues in her state following the U.S. Senate wins in the 2021 elections.
I think this is just one more marker in there, like, their crusade to be in absolute control. The hard thing about it is we're inconsistent in encouraging people to vote when the time comes. So it's so much easier for there to be corruption involved. Who has actual access to education and who actually knows, like, this is how government works. This is what you should need to know. Like, and it should be public information, and it's not. No one ever wants to say it's race, especially in the South, who's on the other side. But you just think, like, it is race. And we've seen it, like, time and time again.
Also today, the Supreme Court faced its most important voting rights case in almost a decade. It's considering how a crucial part of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 applies to voting restrictions that have a disproportionate impact on minorities. Any decision by the court is expected in July.
A top Nike executive resigned after ties to her son's sneaker resale business were revealed. Ann Hebert's departure came days after her 19-year-old son spent over $100,000 on her credit card to buy limited edition sneakers. Sneaker culture is popular among high school and college students. Some spend thousands of dollars on sneakers each year. College students share how their love for sneakers first started and the price they are willing to pay for a pair of highly sought-after shoes.
When I was in like 7th grade, and I always loved shoes. And I never really got them when I was younger. So as soon as I was able to save up lunch money and actually look into shoes and all this other stuff, that's when it clicked. This is probably my most expensive pair. Retail, I believe they're $200. I paid $1,300 for this pair. And now I believe they're like $3,000 to $2,500.
Like me, I have like a common shoe size. I wear a kid's 5.5. But then again, 5.5 is a 7 in women's, which sometimes is kind of hard to find. And when I do find them, since it's such a common size, like they just rack up the price a lot of the times. The off-white Converse. So these are like $350 Converse. $350 wasn't bad for a pair of off-whites though, because off-whites are usually like $400 and up. So it was a good deal I had to take.
You know, Skyler, that's such an interesting story. I'm not such a big sneakerhead, but I know many people are. And I've just seen the culture, especially in sports, just be so surrounded by sneakers, just by shoes in general. What have you seen about this culture?
Oh, absolutely. In basketball in particular, sneakers and the sport are nearly synonymous. Lots of these players grow up as sneakerheads when they're kids. And then when they have the salaries to match, some of them have hundreds of sneakers. Whether you're wearing Kobe's, Jordans, LeBrons, it's such an art of self-expression. A fresh pair of J's, it is just ingrained in the culture. So some people are absolutely obsessed. Like with many other fads or collections, sneakerheads will live on forever, and that obsession will always be there. Sneakerheads always get excited, but Trojan fans, it's time to get excited about something else. Today, the Pac-12 unveiled the 2021 football schedule. USC's schedule features 7 home games at the Coliseum and 5 on the road. Star junior quarterback Kedon Slovis may have ended last season with an injured shoulder, but this morning in an interview with Yogi Roth and Guy Haberman, Clay Helton said Slovis will be back.
He looks great and looks very healthy and can't wait to get going in his junior campaign. He's going through our winter conditioning program right now and has put on additional strength and weight and really is doing a nice job.
I caught up with Roth today, and he said even though SC isn't facing Oregon or Washington in the regular season, they still have an opportunity to impress the college football playoff committee with the teams they will play.
In my eyes, they've got a schedule that will help build a very strong resume for them. They play a San Jose State team. The way that the committee works is they always talk about the team where they ranked when you played them.
All right, I'm bringing in my co-anchor, Nathan Ackerman. Nathan, what are your main takeaways when you see the release of USC's schedule?
So my main takeaway is that it's really not that difficult of a schedule for the Trojans, right? Like Yogi said, Oregon, Washington, they don't have to play them. You get a bye week before the Notre Dame game, right? There are some games in there that could be tricky, like UCLA rivalry, always pesky. San Jose State in the season opener could be tough. BYU to end the regular season could be a tricky game. But all in all, it seems like USC should be able to go 10-2 on the season. And if they're not able to do that, might be an underwhelming season for the Trojans.
Wow, those are some lofty expectations there. And, you know, you mentioned a few matchups, which I think the most important are those out-of-conference matchups against BYU, Notre Dame, and San Jose State, because those are well-ranked teams, especially Notre Dame. And if they can win those, I think, as Yogi alluded to, they will really impress the college football playoff committee and have their chance to potentially go all the way. That wraps up football. Nathan, what do you have for us in hoops today?
The USC women's basketball team is in Las Vegas today, preparing for the Pac-12 tournament to tip off tomorrow. The team is led into Vegas in part by forward Amaya Oliver, who earned a spot on the Pac-12 all-freshman list as an honorable mention.
I was very excited when I first saw it. I was also just shocked. I didn't really tell anybody it was on social media. My parents have social media, so they saw it. I reposted it. I knew they followed me, so they were going to see it. But yeah, overall, I was just excited.
Oliver is joined on the honor roll by all-conference guard Endia Rogers and honorable mentions in forwards Alyssa Peely and Jordan Sanders. The 8th-seeded women of Troy open the tournament against number 9 Arizona State tomorrow.
We're confident. After the 2 games that we played, we got some experience, and then our coaches do a really good job of putting the scout together. So as long as we follow what's on that scout and just pay attention, just know our personnel, then I think we'll be fine.
Tomorrow's first round matchup tips off at 2 p.m. That's all for sports. Now back to news.
Women's History Month is an opportunity to celebrate inspiring female leaders at USC. 2 women involved in the Women's Network say it's an organization that prepares its members for life in the professional world.
I often felt really kind of shy and nervous to share some of the lofty goals that I had. The Women's Network is all about cultivating leaders and for ambitious women to really share what they're passionate about. And so finally, I feel like I'm able to share some of my goals, and I'm not like embarrassed anymore about being an ambitious woman, because for some reason that has a stigma.
We are the next generation that is coming into the workforce, and we can do a lot to change the way that the corporate world functions currently in terms of, you know, men being the precedent for leadership positions or women being the only ones at the table. This organization really sets you up with the skills necessary to feel confident when facing those challenges, whether that's, you know, creating a great resume, creating a great cover letter, getting those interview skills so that when we are in those rooms, people will understand that we take our job seriously.
Yeah, no, personally, I love Women's History Month, but it always gets me thinking that women should just feel celebrated and supported every single day, no matter what month it is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in March I'll be celebrating the women in my life, like my mom and my grandma, a little extra, but that doesn't mean I don't celebrate them every day, and won't continue to celebrate them every day, whether it's Women's History Month or just any other month in the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we both give them a little hi, Mom, right now? Hi, Mom. Well, that's it for Annenberg TV News. Thanks for watching.
From everybody at Annenberg Media, have a great night.